There were a lot of comments saying that running those absolutely enormous LLM models for AI inference costs far too much electricity, and that it is absolutely not feasible. In the past 2 years, AI inference costs have decreased by 99.7%. Hello everyone, it's Era here. There's a very hot AI report that's truly shaking up the entire AI industry right now. She is the venture capitalist who is known as the Queen of the Internet. This is a report that was just recently published by Mary Meeker, and it's called Trends in Artificial Intelligence. This report was released by Mary Meeker, who previously authored the highly cited annual Internet Trends report. This is her first report in 6 years, and as you can see, the sheer volume of this document is quite substantial. It's 340 pages. She has meticulously gathered an enormous amount of data, and the significance of this data is such that this report will be heavily cited in YouTube, industry analysis, company analysis, and trend analysis, not just on YouTube, but in all of these areas. Frankly, it's quite fascinating just to take your time and read through it slowly and see what it contains. I've read through it myself, and I'm going to go over the key points that I think would be really beneficial for all of you to be aware of. For those in a hurry, you can check out the points I've highlighted. I'll also include a link so you can download the original document. When you have time, take a slow look through it to get some insights. So, let's get started. I've picked these points somewhat arbitrarily, so let's start with the very basics first. That would be ChatGPT. It's widely known that ChatGPT has experienced explosive growth. Including myself, many people have discussed this topic extensively, so I've recorded the ChatGPT user growth data up through April of 2025. Over this short period of less than 3 years, it has truly grown to an enormous extent. Especially in recent times, it has displayed a sudden and significant surge. At this point, there were various factors, but people started using it more and more. This is the number of monthly users in just 2.5 years. What you see now is the monthly users, which grew 8 times to an estimated 800 million. Some even estimate it could be up to 1 billion. And if you look further into this, you can see the increase by country. Among the top 10 countries, India is the most utilized at 13.0%, followed by the USA. Actually, we were expecting our country's number of paid users to be quite high, almost next to the USA, but our country didn't appear here. What's also quite interesting here is comparing the search volume seen over the years. The blue dotted line that you see here, this represents Google. Do you see how Google search suddenly spikes up after a steady trend? It spikes up like this, reaching billions in annual search volume. This is in billions, so it's like 5 trillion. Now ChatGPT hasn't been out for long, right? So when we compare this over 2 years, these numbers come up. What took Google 11 years, ChatGPT achieved in just 2. This is a record that's 5.5 times faster, achieving 1 billion daily searches remarkably quickly, which is what they were talking about. Additionally, there's something interesting about the ChatGPT app. They looked at the number of active users in the US spending time on the ChatGPT app, and you can see a 200% increase in that regard. Consequently, the number of users and subscribers has shown a significant rise, which I demonstrated earlier. The subscriber count is also showing a consistent upward trend. This indicates that there is growing demand from users, and as a result, the revenue is also increasing. You might think it's just a rise, but from OpenAI's perspective as a company, ChatGPT's annual revenue has increased more than tenfold. This figure is around $3.7 billion, which certainly indicates very rapid growth. So, since ChatGPT really sparked the AI boom, this seems about right, and we absolutely cannot overlook the big tech companies. They have invested massively in infrastructure. As a direct result, Nvidia has benefited tremendously, especially early on. I'll be putting a page on the left side here so you can follow along if you wish to do so. The specific term Big Six makes its initial appearance on the 5th page of this report. So, the Big Six here refers to the companies you either really like or really dislike, specifically Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, and Alphabet, which is Google. Then we have Amazon. Their biggest revenue source is AWS, and finally Meta. Tesla isn't included in this list, which is a bit surprising. Anyway, looking at the Big Six, excluding Tesla, the cost for capital expenditures investments jumped up significantly from 2023 to 2024. These corporations are already investing truly enormous amounts of capital, but even more than that, there's talk that significantly more investment is expected to be made, which is a major topic right now. In fact, looking at the capital expenditures of the Big Six since 2014, they have consistently made very significant investments. This figure is in billions. If you look at the blue bars, the time they exceeded 100 billion was in 2022. That's 100 trillion won in Korean currency. Wow, that's an enormous amount of money. As these companies continue to invest in capital expenditures, do you happen to see this red line that's marked as zettabytes? It's about how much data is generated, and with investment, they're producing massive amounts. Even now, AI is generating a lot, so the increase in data is clearly shown here. The sheer volume of data means that more capital expenditure is required, because all that data needs to be managed. Not just produced and discarded, but it also needs to be stored, and it needs to be processed. They will need to construct even faster networks. And this particular demand is clearly showing a continuous and significant increase. With such a significant increase, Nvidia has climbed to the top market capitalization and is involved in many fascinating endeavors. Now, here's quite an interesting chart regarding Nvidia Nvidia to examine. Over the past decade, Nvidia's revenue has increased 28-fold. Isn't that truly quite astonishing? They've grown a lot recently as well, and what's interesting is the blue bar represents the research and development amount invested by the big six, the big tech companies, and accordingly, the red line shows Nvidia's revenue continuously increasing dramatically. You can see how steeply it's risen recently, right? You all know about that GPU situation. However, even with talk of China's offensive beginning, there is still a very significant need for Nvidia's GPUs, you see. However, China is also investing heavily in their own chip designs, especially Huawei with things like CM38. Individual GPU performance might be lower, but combined, they aim to run them intensely. This also ties into the energy sector. In the US, the energy infrastructure is underdeveloped and the power grid is outdated, so various power grid demand companies in our country are seeing significant revenue growth and high expectations. However, in China, even though we have a really negative impression because of the constant fine dust and air pollution, internally, they are incredibly dedicated to developing solar and wind power generation. They have built tons of hydroelectric power plants, so comparatively speaking, energy isn't a major concern for them. So even if significant power is consumed, as long as they have the technology to fully leverage the performance, they can handle it. Let's take a look at the number of industrial robots in China. Since we're talking about AI, you might assume it's just about large language models, but there are also things related to robots included here. Actually, each one of these could be its own piece of content, offering a lot of different things to talk about. So, looking at China's AI, the installed base of industrial robots has now surpassed the total number of robots installed in the rest of the entire world combined. This is as of 2023, and by 2024, it might exceed even more. It's a surprising figure, showing how much they focus on automation and manufacturing. It's not just about advanced industries. Even in areas where China might be seen as lagging behind and relying on subsidies, facing criticism, they are fundamentally a strong manufacturing nation. So, industrial robots are extensively used in basic industries like textiles, clothing manufacturing, and similar fields. China has served as the global manufacturing hub for an extended period, accumulating substantial expertise. Even if Trump attempts to repatriate manufacturing, it's not solely about labor expenses. China possesses considerable accumulated know-how from its decades as the world's factory. Rapidly substituting that is quite challenging. China's strategy of going open source might also be part of this approach. The only way to withstand the onslaught of big tech is to go open source. That's why we see platforms like DeepSeek and Cryon emerging. Regarding GitHub, in the last 16 months, there's been a 175% increase in repositories. That's a significant rise in stored projects. If you look at the different elements here, traditionally, there were a lot of saved projects focused on model development, but recently, there's been a sharp increase in AI-related engineering and applications. This surge coincided with the rise of ChatGPT. Also, on the next page, Google has been creating a really robust ecosystem for AI developers, and the number of tokens processed per month has increased 50 times compared to last year. It's almost embarrassing when you see it presented as a bar graph. Indeed, between May of 2024 and May of 2025, it's evident that a substantial number of individuals are actively engaged in the creation and development of applications leveraging Google's suite of Gemini-based foundation models. For Meta's Llama, since they're aiming for an open model, they're just going completely open source with it. It has been downloaded 1.2 billion times, which is truly quite incredible, isn't it? Not only has it been downloaded 1.2 billion times, but also over 100,000 models derived from the truly high-performance Llama model have been created. That's the true power of open models right there. Because it can expand quickly, the global developer ecosystem, including Google, is able to respond to this. When excellent developers worldwide create diverse applications by tuning these models, you have to wonder, can foundation models really beat open models? That's why people say there's no moat. This is interesting. Even S&P 500 companies are increasingly making reference to AI during their quarterly earnings calls, which is a significant increase. During Google's announcements, they mention AI so frequently it became a meme where people would count how many times they said it. Now, 50% of S&P companies are mentioning AI in their earnings reports, which was unheard of previously. But seeing how much they talk about it now, you can tell AI is crucial, even from quantitative metrics. And companies like Microsoft, which have been boosting their AI efforts with OpenAI, are seeing their AI business grow to an annual scale of $13 billion, a 175% increase compared to 2023. The fact that this business sector has suddenly grown so much shows that these big companies are actually starting to monetize AI. Microsoft, for example, is leveraging Azure as a foundation for their AI initiatives, and we're also seeing new startups emerging. Companies like Cursor AI got huge popularity, going from $1 million in revenue to $300 million in just 25 months. That's $300 million everyone. Now, since we've discussed the big six, let's also touch on autonomous driving, shall we? A couple of weeks ago, I went to Google I/O and saw Waymo. Seeing it in person was amazing. The car just moves on its own with no one inside. Waymo's market share in the rideshare market in San Francisco has been steadily rising, reaching 27% in just 20 months. It's steadily replacing services like Uber and Lyft. Just look at this steep curve here. People are increasingly choosing Waymo because its real, actual autonomous driving is happening now. And if you look at the previous page, Tesla's numbers are just staggering. The total miles driven autonomously have now grown to 4 billion miles, which is a 100-fold increase in just 33 months of accumulation. Tesla is gathering an enormous amount of driving data globally, even while driving autonomously. Furthermore, it's impossible not to mention SpaceX here. Globally, the market share for orbital satellite launches was on the verge of declining, but then it experienced a rapid resurgence. This indicates a substantial amount of capital is being invested in this sector. But what's funny about this chart is, they've listed SpaceX separately. That's because when you compare it to other countries, SpaceX holds a tremendous market share. The US, excluding SpaceX, is at this level, and the US has already surpassed the majority. SpaceX alone accounts for nearly half, you could say. So we can see that SpaceX holds a much larger market share than we might actually feel. China is catching up quickly too. Can you see how significant China's share is? Russia, well, they're currently involved in a war, and their standing is quite different compared to the Cold War period. Therefore, you can see that China is significantly further ahead. And now I'd like to show you my favorite chart. Please take a look at this. Many people commented that running these huge AI inference LLM models consumes far too much electricity, arguing it's completely unfeasible. However, costs are decreasing significantly, everyone. We're in 2025 now, and what's truly astonishing about this vertical axis is that it's on a logarithmic scale. It might look like a linear drop, but it's actually reducing by factors of 10, even 100. In just 2 years, AI inference costs have plummeted by 99.7%. That's a truly astounding decrease. So the question is, will it continue to go down? It seems likely to follow this trend, although we'll have to keep an eye on it. This trend is likely to accelerate, isn't it? With things like DeepSeek emerging and causing a stir. Recently, with things like GPT-4, the vertical axis is also on a logarithmic scale, so you can see it's growing by 10 times each time. Just assume it keeps increasing tenfold. It's growing tremendously, which means training these models costs a lot. However, for the number of real-world users to grow substantially, inference cost must decrease. Based on NVIDIA's Volta, Ampere, Hopper, and Black architectures, the energy consumption per token has actually fallen by 105,000 times over the last 10 years. Even accounting for past inefficiencies, that's a 105,000-fold reduction. That's a truly massive decrease in energy usage. Big tech companies are really leading the way here, and the reason they absolutely have to accelerate cost reduction is because of the data center aspect. You see, running these data centers uses an enormous amount of electricity, so they are constantly working incredibly hard to reduce these expenses, aren't they? Reducing these costs directly translates to profits, so investments in this area are ongoing. And there's a lot of other interesting stuff too. Here, you'll see discussions about LLM competition and explainable artificial intelligence. They're essentially in a heated battle, going back and forth. Gemini, Copilot, Anthropic, OpenAI. On May 19th, 2025, when I went to Google I/O, there was so much about Google Gemini. Just the amount of information released at that time was massive. There's truly a wide range of information here, but instead of covering absolutely everything, I've really concentrated on the significant shifts that you can genuinely perceive. Additionally, there are summaries available regarding specific companies, so please feel free to examine those as well. Considering how much transformation has occurred over the last 2.5 years, I'm quite intrigued to see just how much more will evolve moving forward. I intend to continue monitoring the situation closely, and will certainly keep you all updated on any further developments. This has been Error.